Hi, this is Jennetta Billhimer, and I feel honored to be here with Ruth Vincill. She is going to be talking to us today about how to really help your child if they're dealing with neurodiversity, if they just have a different learning style. And Ruth is she taught ESL before this, and she has a bachelor in education. She has her master's in social work, and then when her own daughter was starting to have some, like, when she realized that her daughter was having trouble learning, and that her mind worked differently, she knew that she needed to seek help. So her journey has been an amazing one, and I'm so excited to introduce her to you today. So welcome, Ruth. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to share just what we've learned in our process of helping our second child, and to what to be an encouragement to other parents who are struggling with helping and figuring out what's going on with their own children.
So, Ruth, what do you do when you what does a parent do when we suspect or know that our child has a neurodivergency or a different learning style?
Mhm. Well, there are a couple things that you can do. The first thing, if they're in public school, you need to write a letter requesting an evaluation. And it has to be in writing. Anything you do, you talk for hours about advocacy in the public school system. And I feel free to reach out to me because I've got contacts for you if you need
And
to.
when you
And
started reaching out, you didn't feel like the school was willing to work with you, right?
Right. And so we attempted that, and then was really discouraged by our interactions with them. Just they didn't want to test. They wanted to wait for my daughter to be failing before they did any interventions. And but we knew, and with my background, I knew that something was going on. And so I spoke with my husband, and we had our daughter evaluated privately. Um, and in that evaluation, our suspicions were confirmed. She, in fact, is dyslexic. Um, and I didn't need a diagnosis, and that evaluation didn't give me a diagnosis. What I needed was the information on how she learned, because that information allows me to empower her with the information about how she learns, where she's starting to feel like she's behind, or she might be feeling unintelligent, or she's struggling self-esteem wise with her ability as she sees other people continuing to move forward and she's unable to. Um, and the measure of intelligence is not the ability to read or write by any means. Um,
That's what we
so,
hear all the time, right? Like, can they read and write? Well, they
right,
must be really smart if they can.
right, right.
But
But
that's
that's
just one area of
just one, just one,
intelligence
yeah, just one
and how
area.
the
And
brain
it's
works.
right? It's just one skill set. It's not, so my daughter, for example, loves medical books. She can't read them at all, but if you read them to her, she can tell you all about the physiology of her body and all of the things that are happening in it. And so her inability to read and write, while it can, really impact a self-esteem issue, um, we wanted to intervene early, because early intervention is key. Everybody says early intervention. But then when you get to a system that's supposed to be working, doing that intervention, that's already overwhelmed, that's underfunded, that's struggling all on its own, um, they lack the resources and the training to do that often. Um, and so I'm a firm believer that parents know their children best, and that if they are suspicious of something going on, that they need to not be talked out of it. They need to continue to advocate for their children. And if they can't get it done through the school system, if they can get it done, and by get it done, I mean if they can be tested so that you can learn all about the different, like, are they able to, how's their working memory? How's their long-term memory? How's their phonological processing? Is it visual memory, or is it visual processing, or is it auditory processing that's the struggle here, or all of those things. Now, my daughter as well sees double letters. She sees them like this. Her eyes are fine. She sees them like this. And she writes backwards, and she skips letters, and all of the classic things that are happening. And the more I looked into it, it was like, okay, she needs something. She needs a resource, and there was no resource where we live now. And I learned all of this because I was homeschooling her throughout the pandemic, and it really got that intensive perspective of, oh my, no, she can't do any of this. And with the background I have, having taught ESL and my education background, and I can teach people how to read. I can teach them how to read. I can teach them, phonics, no big deal. But for her, it did not work. All of the things that I was equipped with at that time did not work. So when we pursued testing for her, we got information back. We took that information, gave it to our doctor. Our doctor said, oh, yes, she clearly has a specific learning disability in reading, which is dyslexia. Any reading disability is dyslexia. So we took that to the school, and the school was like, oh, okay. So then they're going to do their own testing to evaluate and all that stuff. Now, I wanted the school to have the information so that I could remove her from the classroom myself to provide the intervention that she needs, because I don't know, not because I don't know, because I do know that the interventions that they're doing are not what's appropriate for her type of learning style and needs. So
many different kinds, aren't there? I mean, there's like learning disabilities with motor skills, and with like all different kinds of things with math and so forth, with
yeah,
memorizing.
exactly. So your long-term memory, your ability to crystallize information within that long-term memory, or your short-term working memory. How long can you hold information in your brain?
Yeah.
And then your executive functioning. How are you able to organize things? How are you able to do these things? And so what I did is I was invited to come to an institute called the Joshua Institute in Boise to become an educational therapist, because they were aware of my background, and two, that there are no resources in the Magic Valley like this. And
Here in Idaho.
Yeah, and they
And
desperately needed that.
that's wonderful. Then you were just able to do that and provide this for this community. And are they in other communities also, the Joshua Institute?
Yeah, so the Joshua Institute is in Boise area, Meridian, and then I'm here, but they're nationwide, and there are actually many places worldwide that have educational therapists. And the organization that I have my licensure through is the National Institute for Learning Development. And so NILD.org is their website, and they have Find a Therapist on there. And you can go and you can look in the map, and you can look at the world. In Canada, there's a huge community. In South America, there's a huge community of individuals who are helping other people like this. And so
Wonderful. That's just really encouraging that there's that help out there for kids and for individuals.
yes, I'm really excited about the work and the progress that I already see in my own child. And I have a few clients, and I'm excited about what they're doing too. And so fast forwarding a little bit, I started my own business because I had these conversations with individuals about we don't have any resources. I talked to our doctor. They're like, I don't refer anybody to anywhere in state. I always tell them to go out of state for this or that assistance with their children. And so having gotten the training for my own daughter and seeing the impact of it, and then knowing there's a need in our community, I thought, okay, well, I can do this. I can do this with other children, because early intervention is key, and it can literally change the trajectory academically for a child, right? It can change, because the growth mindset of the neuroplasticity in the brain facilitates new openings of neural pathways in order to increase your cognition and your ability, just like we do in physical therapy, where we exercise a muscle over and over again, or we stretch it, or we, do things that are really small micro movements, but all of a sudden they're facilitating a whole new movement. It's the same thing with our brains. And what I really like about the program is that it's research-based. It's each activity has specific goals and whether they're cognitive goals or academic goals, or perceptual skills or non-cognitive skills that we are working on refining, which we pull from the testing. And so when I found out that, okay, I can become an educational therapist, I have the background, I already have my graduate degree, this is a continuing education type of a thing. I've been invited to do it. And so I might as well just try to do it because we know this is what our kid needs. But then when I was like, okay, well, I want to help more kids, I became a guess certified administrator of the Woodcock-Johnson 4, which is the IQ test that we did to get the information for my own daughter. So I have a very strong evaluation background as well. I used to work in so many different fields, but data processing and evaluation. And so with that component as well, became an administrator for the Woodcock-Johnson and the Gray oral reading tests, oral reading tests. And those things are the information that we need to look at and say, oh, you know, they understand everything they see visually, but when you say it to them, they don't. There's not a connection there. So how can we strengthen that muscle basically in their brain? How can we help continue to push that and open those pathways with the child and walk with them in it? And it's a delicate balance to go just far enough, but not,
Yeah.
you know, over the edge. But it's hard work. The kids are
Well,
exhausted by the end of it.
and so what if your child is already, 13 or 16? Will you talk a little bit about the brain plasticity, that,
Yeah.
can they still, is that,
So
can you
neuroscience
do?
now knows in the past several years that the plasticity of the brain, while may be most malleable when you are a young child, it does not stop throughout your entire life. There are adults who do educational therapy. There are, college students who are doing it. There are high schoolers, there are middle schoolers, and in the elementary school
So
age
the
range.
sooner the better, but just,
There's
um,
no lost
but it's,
time.
and that you can still, that, and then it just makes it so much easier to learn with this
Mhm.
method. Maybe tell us a little bit about, the method and how it really, how it helps.
Sure. So we have 5 core techniques that we do, and each of those core techniques are multisensory, and they touch on all of the areas that we're focusing on in the brain: the processing speed, the visual, um, visual processing, auditory processing, long-term memory, short-term memory, all of the areas, and they're all multisensory. And so we do these 5 core techniques, and one of them incorporates learning cursive, but it's a unique way to do it with, it's called rhythmic writing, where you're crossing your midline, physically crossing your midline, and then articulating specific phrases. And then I'm asking questions at the same time, forcing those connections to happen in your brain.
And so
Simultaneously.
you're,
And then we
oh,
have,
sorry, and then you're working with the children, right? So then they can come to you
mhm,
and you can do this with them. Um,
yes. So
is it
educate,
fun for them?
well, so I make it fun, but it's not like playtime. We get to work.
Mhm.
And I'm not going to be their working memory. It's kind of another phrase here. I'm not going to be your working memory. I'm going to sit here with you quietly while you think through this problem. I'm going to give you encouragement. There are no wrong answers. I'm also going to ask you to tell me, why did you come up with that answer? I'm going to have you defend your answer so that you can get through the process of thinking clearly, being able to articulate, not guess the answer, but articulate why you got to the answer that you did. And if your thinking is logical, and I came up with a different answer, but if your thinking is logical and you can defend your answer, then you have completed that exercise successfully. And there's no failing here, right? Like nobody's going to tell you, no, you're wrong, you did this, you get an F in educational therapy. No, the goal is to learn how to learn and to increase our ability to do that through scientifically proven, um, the the method that I use is accredited by the International Dyslexia Association, which means that there are rigorous standards that we have to meet yearly and get re-licensed every single year in order to continue to do this process. So there is an academic component, but it's not tutoring, and it's not made to be reading tutoring or math tutoring. What it is let's increase your ability to solve problems and your cognition, your confidence, and your capacity to hold information, so that when you do those things and you put a child like that in the classroom, as they have increased in those areas, then their independence, confidence, cognition, application in the classroom is significant. Their whole performance changes, because cognition is not fixed and ability is not fixed. And so when we put a child like that in the classroom, not only there, but when we have people go off into their life, we have many former individuals who have done educational therapy who are now in college, who are heads of their businesses and have done much more than perhaps their original prognosis described that they would.
Yeah, because I mean, look at what individuals have done, people that have dyslexia. There are some really amazing people that have dyslexia, and they've overcome challenges in that they go on to do amazing things. They're really smart individuals.
Yeah, and the dyslexic brain is so beautiful because it solves problems in unique ways, in
In
ways that
ways
you
that aren't solved otherwise, right?
that would go
By
unsolved.
other people.
Exactly. It's very outside of the box, but the creativity and the problem solving ability that individuals with dyslexia have, there's so many great books. The one that I love the most, when it talks about like the specific advantages and strengths of the dyslexic brain, is called The Dyslexic Advantage. And it is just fabulous. And it really, spells out like, here's some strengths that you can look for, or here's some strengths, and here's this client and they had this situation and this is how they solved it. But the dyslexic brain is just a fascinating brain, as well as any neurodivergent brain. There's going to be deficits, but there are also strengths that we can emphasize. And so one of the things that we do here with that growth mindset is that we're not only talking about your deficit or your disability, because first off, we're going to talk about it. We're going to be real frank about it, because it's nothing to be ashamed of. There's no shame in this space to talk about it. And it's often misunderstood in our culture, in our society, but we approach this as, oh, this is more information for me to learn. I was telling Jennetta earlier that my husband is a scientist. In our household, one of the things that we do is when nothing succeeds, when we've tried something and it's just been either a dismal failure or, it wasn't the outcome that we expected, our mantra in our household is, well, that's great. That's great. Now we know more information about what to do next time. Or now we know that we need to approach it from a different way. And just like that in an educational therapy, we don't waste our mistakes. The
Right.
mistakes are
Failure is not failing. Like, it shows that you're succeeding, that you're just moving along on the path, right?
exactly.
And also, isn't it so amazing that we have so many different kinds of individuals too, that for the world that maybe we have been failing and just not realizing that
Right.
we need all these people. We need everyone, all of us. And it's okay, because now, and sadly it's been hard for a lot of people, but now we've learned these things that there's so much good about being, having being diverse, perhaps,
Let's look at our
neurologically.
community. Let's look at our community of people. 1 in 5
Yeah.
people have dyslexia. 1 in 5.
Which is interesting, because like it's perhaps we need this neurodivergency, in this today. Maybe we need more people who are thinking outside of what we have always thought should be, the box here.
Well, and I mean, and
Either
even
smart or not smart. Like, no,
Nobel
right?
Prize winners or Albert Einstein or Steve Jobs, We wouldn't have the iPhone if we didn't have dyslexia. Like
Mhm.
what would our world do? And so all of these, the community of people and the way that we can serve them best is not getting rid of their disability, but teaching them how to harness it and exercise the areas that they need to exercise in order to marry both sides of these um, functioning in order to be even more successful or struggle less or even just understand. Like, it is so empowering for my daughter to say, oh, I have dyslexia. And for a while she couldn't, she has really bad long-term memory, and so for a while she couldn't remember the name of it. So she was like, what is it that I have, Mom?
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
and I was like, you're dyslexic. And she's like, oh, that's why. I was like, exactly, that's why. And that doesn't mean that you can't learn anything. You can learn anything you want to learn. We just got to figure out how your brain learns first. Um, and so being able and alleviating so much frustration for me, for her in particular, and my ability to go into the school system or any other academic environment that she's involved in and say, let me tell you about my daughter. And let me tell you about some things that definitely won't work. And let me tell you about some interventions that will work in your
So
setting.
empowering.
Yeah. So being able to do that. But then in the homeschool environment, I think a lot of individuals who have children who aren't learning best in the public school system or private school system, they have removed their children and are doing it themselves, which I commend 1,000%, because I firmly believe that parents know their children's needs best and they are their biggest advocate, and that they need to trust their intuition in doing all they can in order to help their children succeed. And the more information we have about our children and the way that they learn, whether it's a slow processing speed and we just need to, count to 20 before we expect them to respond um, to a command or to a question or um, anything like that, that is so helpful for everyone in the circumstance, because you're learning how not only just to like communicate well and alleviate frustration, you're loving your child well by knowing who they are, and helping them in those areas, or you know giving them the cues or prompts to do what they need to do in the way that they best receive. So for the homeschool community, I would love for everybody to have educational therapy. I think actually every student could do it.
Right.
And it
Because
would
don't
be
you
awesome.
think that because everyone's brains are just different, and so we all could use, what somebody else, and if you can use that brain plasticity, you can and you can change, nurture the neurons to, go and do
It's
all the things that they need to do.
that's
How
really
like how amazing would that be for everyone?
Yeah, but in the homeschool community, like I know that the parents are doing the work that they need to do. And if they are experiencing those frustrations, I want to be able to offer the testing that you have wait lists for and all of the stuff, not for a diagnosis, but just to know, like, is it processing visually? Is it processing verbally? Is it, you know, symbol recognition? What is going on here specifically that we need to pinpoint in order to empower our children?
And so
And
you're able to help that to them to be able to have that now like that specific part, right?
the evaluation. So I offer the Woodcock-Johnson 4, and that is basically it's an IQ test, and it tells you your IQ. And you could get this done with a neuropsychologist, um, and that would be fine. They would come away with a diagnosis, maybe, maybe not. They would also do other assessments, the WISC, which is the one that the public school system uses, and which is
Do
also
they
a very reputable one.
and do you need those ones, or can they just come right to you and start looking at the specifics of what needs
So
to be worked on for you? Or
right. What we do is it's based on assessment. So each individual educational therapy client has had some sort of cognitive academic achievement testing within the past 2 years. And then because that's relevant data to what their learning style is and where their struggles are. Um, And then I look at that and we design a plan. First off, I look at it and say, oh, you're a good candidate for this, or you're not a good candidate for this, and you should probably go talk to this person over here, or look into this program, because I want it to be impactful for anybody who's doing it, not just because I want to do it. I want it to be impactful because it can be. And so we do the assessment, and then we do educational therapy,
What does
usually
that look
for
like?
30. Yeah, so it's 2 sessions a week, and it's 60 to 80 minutes a session based on the child's endurance. Usually I tell parents, I'm like, okay, we're gonna start at 60 minutes, but we're gonna work up to 80 minutes because I really want those 80 minutes with your kid.
Yeah, because
It's
for
that,
some kids, it's hard to sit for very long at all.
yeah.
So
And so
for work,
my daughter is a sensory seeking child. She has a sensory processing disorder, and she wants to spell upside down. And so she's upside down and she's doing her verbal exercises that we do, or she's
she's
too
cool with
sleepy
that.
to write on the chalkboard. And so we have a balance board and she stands on the balance board and her whole core is, engaged while she's trying to do cross her midline exercises. Um, and
Nice.
so, yeah, there's no wrong person to come to educational therapy. There's no wrong need, or you're not going to be looked at in a way that says, oh, what are they doing here? No, the whole deal is acceptance. We're just all about who you are. And I tell my kids, my students, I'm like, this is about your brain, and your brain is so cool. And I want to learn all about it. And what we're going to do here is we're going to open the pathways in your brain so that we can help make connections and new connections to make it easier to think through problems. Um, and so, yeah, so it's 2 sessions, 80 minutes. We do the 5 core techniques, and then I have 20 more techniques that I can add in there. But those are very, very specifically targeted towards the deficit areas that a student needs assistance with. So, and the 5 core techniques touch on everything. So they're like the base that we stand on. But then the other techniques that we use target very specifically, like language processing, or developing a long-term visual memory, or auditory processing, or auditory discrimination skills. Like all we have in each technique is specific in their goals and objectives, and they're based in science. So we know that they are making an impact, and it's slow growth. The average time in educational therapy is often 3 years, but it's not something you do after that, right? Like you have become an independent, functioning individual in your classroom. You have achieved the goal here, and that means that you're able to function well in this classroom without all of the supports that you needed previously. Maybe you still need supports, but you don't need the ones that you needed that were not working.
And so do they meet with you? So is it like for 3 years that they work with you?
So we start with 32 sessions, ideally, and then we start with 32 sessions, and then we talk. So I do some baseline evaluations, I do informal evaluations, the Woodcock-Johnson and the gray oral language, the gray oral reading testing. And we look at that, and I have that baseline, and then we make goals together. And we say, these are the areas that we see, here are the things that we need to target, and including the child in that, because there's the information that your child learns about themselves is very important.
And
It
do you do that? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
You
it's
do that for
empowering.
about 6 or 7 months then, if it's about
We
16
do
weeks?
we do it for about 4 months. 32 sessions over about 4 months. Um,
Mhm.
and then
For
we
16 weeks.
yeah, so it's like a semester, basically. We do it for a semester, and then we discuss it. And then we meet and see where we are on our goals.
And during that time, you're doing about 36 sessions.
Yeah. 32 usually.
32.
Mhm.
Because you're meeting twice a week.
Yes, meeting twice a week. And if we need to, if there's a medical situation at home or those types of things, we can do it online. I can do it virtually through a secure Zoom setting. And having taught online before, um, it's not a big deal to transition. And there's licensure requirements as well in order to be able to do it, make sure the integrity of the process is maintained. But ideally, particularly with children, that individual connection is important. And it's also body language tells you a lot. And
So you need to be able to see them, and if they do somersault off the screen, it's better if it is in person, but there's a possibility maybe of Zoom.
Right. We want
Or
to be
maybe you
able.
can find somebody in their area, you're saying
Yeah.
too, and you can help them get in touch.
There's a national network on the NILD.org. You can click find a therapist and you can find one hopefully in your area. It's the practice of educational therapy has been around for 40 years. And so it's still pretty new, right? Like it's a baby.
Which is
But
exciting to be
yeah,
a part of that and to have this available for kids, for your kids.
but I love that it takes the individual elements from things that are scientifically based and known as best practices and marries them into a way that is specific for each child. Because a box, like let's do a reading phonics program. Okay, well, that's the box, the reading phonics program. And my kid doesn't fit in that box. Now they need those skills, but that program isn't working. And what we do is we create like an arena, no box, just an arena for learning and for challenging and creating these independent, confident thinkers. And a lot of the work we do in the beginning is overcoming the self-esteem issues that we have, that they've gotten from their experiences thus far.
Being compared, and this is how you have to learn, and this is what you need to learn, and
or just feeling like, oh, my teacher didn't teach me this. I had a student tell me, like, my teacher, she wasn't very good. She didn't teach me this, or, all of these things. And I'm like, I don't want them to blame another person for not knowing it, because there's nothing to blame here. All that we need to do is know what we need to learn and what we need to work on. It's not a matter of so-and-so didn't teach me, or, I just can't remember, or these types of things. It's like, let's take this information because it's all so important. And let's make a plan for you because we're going to work together. You're not alone in this. You're not alone. I'm going to help you. Your parents are going to help you. We're all going to gather with you. But the most important person in it is our student, is our child, because they're the ones who have to do the hardest work, and acknowledging this is going to be hard work and you're going to be tired afterwards. And that's okay. Because, and I tell my daughter this when she's like, I don't want to do it. First off, she's the daughter, so she's going to say those things. And then secondly, remind me what we're doing right now. Remind me what we're doing. And having her being able to verbally articulate, like, we're creating new pathways in my brain so I can learn more things, so that I can, remember to remember, and
just
all of that.
remembering
So,
why we're doing this. Yes.
yeah.
This is all just so empowering, Ruth. I just really appreciate you being on this interview today and sharing all of this valuable information. Um, we'll post your website on the video. It will be down below, and you can just go on there and you can learn more about what Ruth offers, and just maybe even contact her and then also just see if there's something in your area too, wherever you live with in the whole world. So
Right. So my business is called Limitless Learning, and the website is limitlesslearningeducationaltherapy.com. It's a mouthful, but it tells you exactly what I do. And yeah, I'd love to talk with or email with anybody who thinks, this is something's happening with my kid. And even if you don't have services with me, I would love to be an encouragement to you in the community and help you pursue what what is best for your kid. So I really appreciate the opportunity to be on here and talk, and I could talk about it forever. So if anybody wants to talk.
Yeah,
Good.
well, it's such an honor to have you on, Ruth, and to talk with you and to hear all of the insights that you've been able to share with us. I think it's really empowering for the parents, and that they can then go and empower their children.
Yeah,
Um,
it has been for me, and I've seen it be that way for many others as well.
well, thank you again so much, Ruth, for taking the time to talk with us today.
You're welcome. Thank you.